Alright guys, Rob Russell here, and today I'm not in cross trend. Why? Well, that's because I've moved in with my girlfriend into my new house. I did it about a month ago, or probably more like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this is my game room in my new house. My plan is to at some point do like a game room tour. As you can see Pikachu in the background, Bulbasaur over there. I've actually also got Squirtle and Charmander down here. I won all these from London over New Year's. I won all these. I just wanted them in the game room on the couch. But this is my game room. At some point, I plan on doing a room tour, showing you all the sort of stuff in the room. I'll have to do that on my phone, for the sake of it being, I suppose, visual and you can actually see all the stuff. But this is my new house, and today, that's not what we're discussing though today, unfortunately. Today we're discussing, of course, you all know about it. We're discussing, I nearly called it Captain America. Avengers Endgame was released earlier this week. I finally got to watch it tonight with my friend Terence and my partner. And it was great. It was, I think some people unfortunately had built this up to me to be like the coming of the next like Citizen Kane or something like that. I know someone on Facebook that I'm a friend with said that this was like a moment in cinema. And at points in the film, and I suppose at points, yeah, I guess just in the film, I was like, yeah, this does feel like kind of a moment. Like, in terms of getting quality actors on screen in such large capacity, it felt like there was a moment. But as a film itself, like, it doesn't feel like a Godfather or a Citizen Kane. It isn't like a cinematic masterpiece, but at the end of the day, that's not what this film was. This is Avengers Endgame. This is the conclusion to the 11-year-long storyline that began with Iron Man back in 2008. And Avengers Endgame was an excellent conclusion to the Avengers story. And they are going to do films after this. Naturally, we've got Spider-Man Far From Home coming, I think in July. And we've got another film this year. We've got Guardians next year, I believe. Probably another Black Panther, another Captain Marvel, I'd imagine, would come at some point. But no, Avengers Endgame was the perfect way to wrap up the Avengers story. Naturally, as I do with all my movies, I'm going to be doing spoilers. I haven't done a movie review on my channel for ages, so this is going to be a really fun one for me to do. I hope it doesn't take too long, because I've only got one bottle of 7-Up. When I went today, I just thought I'd show you guys. I took my Iron Man. My girlfriend actually got me this. She gave me it for free. She won it on a grabber years ago, and she just gave me it for free, and I took it with me because I wanted him to see the film too. How fun it would be for him. This review will naturally go into spoilers on the film. I will basically kind of run through the whole film, just because in terms of picking moments, I think it's easier if I just try and run through the film from start to finish. It's a long film. It's about 2 hours and maybe 45 minutes. We got in the cinema. It kicked off about 5:30. We didn't get out until probably 8:30, maybe 20 to 9, something like that. But no, I went in with my Marvel shirt. I was super pumped for Endgame. And I think, to be honest, to its discredit, and it's not to its fault, as I said, a lot of people had hyped this film up quite a lot. It was the forthcoming of Citizen Kane or The Godfather. It was this cinematic gem that it was never going to be, because it's not a Godfather. It's not a dramatic masterpiece film that is built on great camera work and stuff. And it does have great camera work and stuff. And for the sake of this review, I'm going to leave discussing how the film looks kind of very small and not very detailed. The film looks incredible. The CGI is obviously fantastic. The acting from everyone involved is superb. I think special mentions go to Jeremy Renner, who by far was the best Hawkeye. This was the best Hawkeye in any MCU film. I think a special mention also goes to Karen Gillan, who was really good as Nebula in this film. Out of anyone in this film, Nebula was the one to me that stood out the most, because she hasn't had a film yet. And I would say that this, out of all her performances, has been her best performance. She had to do 2 performances. It was great. Who else? I'd probably say Downey Jr., Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans deserve special mentions for their kind of third arc or the third act, and what happens in that for them. But no, like I think in terms of acting, everyone was fantastic. Obviously, you got Chadwick Boseman, Tom Holland, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch, Denai Guevara. Like, there's so many talented actors and actresses in this film. Is it Elizabeth Olsen? Elizabeth Olsen, who is Wanda Maximoff. You've got Josh Brolin as Thanos. You've got Chris Hemsworth. You've got Chris Pratt. You've got Zoe Saldana, Vin Diesel, Dave Bautista, who gets one line of dialogue. You've got Korg, the guy who plays Korg from Thor Ragnarok. I don't know his name, and I really wish I did, because he was excellent for his, like, 10 lines of dialogue. So the acting and stuff is all not what you really go to a review of Avengers for. You go to hear about the story and hear about what happens. And as far as what happens in this film, I had my expectations subverted. I didn't see them pulling a fast one as early in the film as they did. Now, there are a couple of character deaths as well, which we'll probably get to later on in the review. But at the beginning of the film, it is immediately the aftermath of Infinity Gauntlet Day, which is what I'm going to call it, where Thanos snaps his fingers, half the population is wiped out. It is immediately the aftermath of that, and we have Nebula and Tony Stark in the spacecraft. They're flown away from Titan, but they're out of fuel. They're running out of oxygen. They're just messing about, and Tony Stark drifts off to sleep. Some people in the cinema definitely thought he died. I was very sceptical. I was like, they won't kill him off in the first 10 minutes because he's Tony Stark. If he's going to die, he's going to die in a big, glorious way, which we'll get to. Spoilers. And as he drifts off to sleep, he is awoken by a light. It is Captain Marvel who comes. She brings the ship back to Earth. He meets with Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, sorry. Who, that's the first meeting they have had since Civil War. Very cool moment. It wasn't focused on a lot, but it was a very cool moment for me as someone who is, my favourite superhero is Chris Evans, well, is Steve Rogers. He, to me, has made Captain America one of the most fleshed out and best characters that Marvel have ever produced. He's an interesting character, Captain America, but he doesn't have a lot of kind of diversity when it comes to storylines or like the way you can present him. In Civil War, I thought he was excellent, and I think in Infinity War he was excellent too, although I wish there was more of him. I've got a Captain America shield tattoo on my leg, obviously. Like, he's my favourite superhero, and I love him to bits. But no, that meeting between those two was really, really interesting. And Tony Stark, when he gets back to Earth, basically just decides, like, I'm done with this, we lost, and what did you say, Cap? It's like, what did you say, Cap? We win as a team, we lose as a team, well, we lost as a team. And you've got all the other Avengers there. You've got Hulk and, not Hulk. No, you have got Hulk. You've got Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, not Hulk. You've got Scarlett Johansson, you've got Romanov. Clint Barton isn't there yet. Really, and I've kind of skipped this, but at the beginning of the film, when the film literally begins, you have Hawkeye, Clint Barton, teaching his daughter he's teaching her archery, how to fire a bow and arrow. And as he turns around, they all go missing. His sons and his wife all go missing. His sons, his daughter, and his wife all go missing. And it's because Thanos has erased them. And that sends Clint on a war path, which we'll again get onto later on in the review. But Hawkeye in this film and Clint's character arc was by far one of the most impressive aspects of this film. Jeremy Renner's a really talented actor, and as far as like facial expressions go, he really nails the sad, angry dude. Like, he can pull off being emotionally challenged but still being a badass really, really well. But anyway, so you've got you've got Iron Man saying he doesn't want to fight Thanos anymore, he's done. And then what it literally does, and I found this so interesting, so they have all these people, they track Thanos down to this planet. I can't remember the name of the planet. But you've got Thor, Rocket, Chris Evans, I keep calling him Chris Evans, Captain America, Romanov, Black Widow, and they all go to this planet, and I can't remember who else is there, Rhodey there, Jason Rhodes. This is one of his best films, actually, of the MCU as well. But they all go there, and Thanos doesn't have the Infinity Gauntlet anymore. He's actually not that powerful. Like, in all honesty, the Infinity Gauntlet took so much out of him to use it that, like, he's just a human. Well, he's not a human, he's a Titan, but he's just a normal person making cups of tea. And so Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel's as well, they fly in and they question him. They say, "Where are the stones?" Thanos says, "I used the stones to destroy the stones," which doesn't make sense because you'd have one left, but whatever. But no, he destroys the stones and they question him. They say, "It's been like 2 days. How have you done this?" And before anyone can question him again, Thor cuts his head off with Stormbreaker. Now, I was very, angry when they killed Thanos off, because Thanos is the best villain the MCU have ever done. I think Ultron was a very compelling villain. David Spade did a really good I just kicked laptop, as Ultron, and I think that really helped set his performance apart, especially because as a villain, Ultron was very samey. Other villains, I don't really know if there's anyone else that compares to Thanos. The Winter Soldier, Bucky was an excellent villain, but really, no one else was like Thanos. And to kill him off that quickly and just like that, it felt like a bad payoff. But as the movie progressed, I understood why they did that a little bit more. So Thanos is dead, and Thor just walks away, and the screen goes black. And it then goes to 5 years later. Now, I didn't see this coming. I didn't think they would move time forward so much, because now the timeline is not the same as our real life timeline. So the Infinity Gauntlet snap happened in 2019 or 2018, and the rest of the MCU now takes place in 2023 or 2024, regardless, whatever it is. So we get to 2024, and basically everyone is trying to forget the Infinity Gauntlet incident, as I'm calling it. You've got Chris Evans kind of counselling people. I keep calling him Chris Evans. Steve Rogers kind of counselling people and trying to help them overcome the problems they've had from the incident. You've got Natasha Romanoff having squadrons set up in sectors of the galaxy. You've got Rhodey watching Earth, you've got Captain Marvel, you've got Rocket Raccoon, you've got Okoye watching Wakanda, and then you've got someone else, there's Nebula as well. But they've got all these little agents kind of watching the world, and Chris Evans, I keep calling him Chris Evans, it's Steve Rogers. You've got Steve Rogers kind of going to Natasha Romanoff and saying, like, we can't forget this because we were part of this. So with all that happening, Scott Lang comes out of the quantum zone, or the quantum realm, sorry. A quantum zone is like Phantom Zone from Superman, General Zod. No, the quantum realm. He escapes it, which obviously he was trapped in at the end of Ant-Man vs. the Wasp, because he couldn't get out. And he gets out, and he hasn't realised that the finger snap incident happened. So he comes out, and he's like, where is everyone? He goes to a grave site where there's basically like walls of people that vanished, or the vanished is what it said. I'm going to need more in the bottle. And Scott looks at the names, he sees his own name, so he runs and sees his daughter. His daughter's now like 15 years old. Cassie Lang, I think's her name. Or Cassie, it's one of them, I think it's Cassie. But no, he sees her and he's like, "Hi, darling, how you doing? Like, I'm still alive." But then Scott realises that basically he can use the quantum realm to go back in time and basically stop Thanos from taking the stones. So the first kind of act of the film was them coming up with a way to get all of the stones with as limited, because obviously there's that, I can't remember what, did he call it like PIM crystals or something that Scott called it, where he says, like, we don't have a lot of these and we need to keep them because we need them to go back. And basically they needed to get as many Infinity Stones as possible in as few trips. So what they decided is the first part was like, we need to do this. And Romanov actually notes that there was a point in time when there was 3 Infinity Stones in New York, and Banner and Stark are like, oh my god, that's genius. So they set out in teams of like 2 or 3, and they go to different areas. So you've got in New York, there's Tony Stark. They go back to New York 2012. So when the original invasion happened with Loki bringing in I almost want to say Chimera, but that's not what they're called. The alien, basically. The alien invasion in 2012 in the original Avengers. You've got Tony Stark and Hulk and Ant-Man, who basically... Sorry, you've got Tony Stark and Ant-Man, who basically are trying to get the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone. And then you've got Hulk, who's trying to get the Time Stone from the Sorcerer Supreme, who at that point is not Stephen Strange. Stephen Strange is still being Stephen Strange, literal Doctor Stephen Strange, the spinal surgeon. And then you've got, and obviously he has an interesting conversation with the Sorcerer Supreme, and he basically, in the end of that, he makes her give him it by saying that Strange gave it up. Like, when Stephen Strange becomes Sorcerer Supreme, he gave that up, knowing that in the future we would win, or something like that, so she actually gives him it, which is a really cool character moment. For Stephen Strange, it wasn't even on screen. And then finally, in New York, there is Chris Evans. Chris Evans! It's Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers, Captain America. I'm going to call him Captain America from now on. You've got Captain America, who is getting the... Wait, he's getting another one. The staff, that's it. He's getting the staff. And he basically goes in the lift with all the Hydra agents, who are obviously double agents, being agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he basically says "Hail Hydra" to one of them, and they think he's with them. And then he has a fight with Captain America, Captain America versus Captain America, and it's a really cool fight, really well choreographed, and it was like amazing for me to watch because I love Cap. And he actually wins by Cap seeing the picture of Peggy, and then he actually says Bucky's alive, and then knocks him out as well, which is really cool. And so Cap completes his mission and gets an Infinity Stone. Hulk completes his mission and gets an Infinity Stone. Hulk at this point as well, which they don't explain too much, and they don't go into too much detail about it, but Hulk is he's Hulk. He's the Hulk. He's big green Hulk, but he's also Bruce Banner's intelligence. He can speak properly, he can think properly. They don't explain how he did this, they just say, you did this. Which means that he did that in the 5 years between Infinity War and Endgame. Well, the second kind of chapter of Endgame. But with Hulk and Steve Rogers correctly completing their missions, Ant-Man and Iron Man actually fail. They lose the Tesseract, and it gets taken away by Loki. They basically mess something up. They screw up a little bit. Loki grabs it between his legs and then teleports away back to Asgard, I imagine. They don't really talk about that too much. Yeah, Loki. When I saw Tom Hiddleston was on the casting, I was really worried because Loki was one of the deaths that I wanted to stick, just because it felt real. Like that felt like a death you can't really come back from. But no, so they lose the Tesseract. So then Stark and Captain America decide that they need to find another place quickly where they can get enough fuel or gem or time pin, whatever element they call it, to get back to the present day, but they also need to go to a time where they can get the Tesseract. They decide to go back to 1970, which is where Hank Pym has a lab where the Tesseract is, and in this, Tony Stark gets the Tesseract, but at the same time he also meets his dad, which is a really cool scene, because it's Ted Stark, isn't it? Ted Stark barely gets talked about in the MCU, and is actually a really interesting character and a really interesting backstory. He gets talked about a little bit in Ant-Man, and he's really interesting in that. Just the dynamics and economics of Ted Stark are really interesting. And then while he's getting the Tesseract, Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, Captain America, is getting the fuel. He just takes it from Hank Pym pretty much. They both escape. That's all perfect. They both escape. They go back to present day. Then we have so there's 3. There's a stone I'm missing. 3 there. Oh, okay. Then we've got Thor and Rocket Raccoon who go to Asgard because obviously one of the stones is in Asgard. I believe it's I can't remember which one it is. But there's a stone in Asgard, basically on that girl's necklace, I believe. But while they're there, Thor at this point is like an alkie, and they basically bring Thor, and they find Thor in like this really rundown place where all the Asgardians live. It's like a mining town or like a fishing town essentially. They find Thor, and he's like a pisshead essentially. He's drunk. He's sad, mad with himself because he believes that he cost so many lives. And there's an amazing scene, and this is my favourite scene maybe in the whole film, where Thor is sitting in his house with Korg, my favourite character ever from Thor Ragnarok, and they're talking, and then Korg just butts in and says, "Thor, this kid online's calling me a dickhead again," and it just made me laugh so much. It was so funny. And then Thor like gets online with him, and he starts chatting to him and says he's going to come to his house and beat him with his hammer. It's hilarious stuff. And to that extent, most of the humour in this film was actually really solid, and it all really did hit its mark. Most of the jokes were about Thor, and I think as a comedian, Chris Hemsworth actually is a very, very well-timed comedian. His comedic timing is quite excellent. But no, Thor and Rocket Raccoon go to Asgard. They get the necklace. They get the Infinity Stone from Asgard, but at the same time, they also come in contact with Thor's mum, who obviously dies in Thor: The Dark World, the second Thor film in 2013. And Thor basically just says goodbye to her. It's actually a really nice scene, really well like shot scene. So they leave Asgard. That's probably the lesser interesting part of all these little things going on. And then we've got there's Morag, which is the place where Star-Lord Peter Quill found the Power Stone. He found it there, and they have Rhodey and Nebula go and get it. But as they are going to get it, the Nebula in 2014, which is where they are when they go to Morag, when they knock out they basically knock Quill out and stop him from getting the Power Stone. The Nebula from 2014, so not the present day one, who's gone back in time, basically has a malfunction and basically shows that Nebula's talking to Rhodey on that planet, the future one. So Thanos like opens her up, and Ebony Maw's in this scene, and I really like all of Thanos' little goons. There's Ebony Maw, there's Corvus Glaive, there's the big tank one, I can't remember what it's called, but they're all really cool goons. So Ebony Maw's in this scene, and they basically take Nebula apart, and they basically show that Nebula's not the only Nebula in this time, and there's a copycat Nebula. And Thanos opens this Nebula up, his daughter up, and he finds out that on her memories, it shows Thanos winning and getting all the Infinity Stones and getting what he wants. So Thanos says, there's no point in us, like, basically finding all the Infinity Stones here when these people are basically doing all the work for us. So why don't we just follow them? So this is how Thanos was brought back into the plot, and I thought that this was the best way to do it, because I was really worried after they killed him off that he would not be in it again. And if they didn't pull Thanos back into it, this film would not get as high a rating as I'm probably going to give it at the end. So yeah, Thanos, Gamora's obviously there as well, not dead, because this is 2014 Gamora, before she's been thrown off a cliff. They actually, as well, they capture the Nebula, the present-day Nebula, the good Nebula is what I'm going to call her, and they swap her with the bad Nebula. So the bad Nebula goes back with Rhodey to present day, to the Avengers HQ, brings the Power Stone, meets with everyone when they all get back. Then we've got Vormir, which is where the Soul Stone was found. Now the Soul Stone, this worried me. When I realised who was going to Vormir, and it was going to be Black Widow and Hawkeye, and you know how you get the Soul Stone, I immediately knew where it was going. And basically, Vormir was all about which one was going to sacrifice themselves, was going to give themselves up and throw themselves off the cliff. And they both discuss it, and basically both say, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it. And then they both have a fight to decide who's going to do it. And it was a really cool fight, because it was so heartbreaking watching them both fight to commit suicide, to try and save people. Like, that was so endearing. And especially as Hawkeye's character, up to this point, which I haven't really talked about, was he was an assassin after this 5 year break, after this 5 year span. He'd become a hitman essentially, and he'd gone down the path of evil. And Black Widow found him and said, "We need to sort you out." And so Hawkeye is on this cliff and he's like, "No, I've done wrong. I've done wrong. Like, I don't want to. I want to make amends for my crimes." And Black Widow's like, "No, you can't. You've got a family. This sort of thing. We need to save your family." And they fight on this cliff and they throw each other about. And Hawkeye throws an explosive arrow, and Widow like falls out of the way. And then like Hawkeye runs and jumps off. But as he jumps off, Black Widow ropes him, and they're both stuck on the cliff. Hawkeye's higher up. He's holding on to Black Widow's arm, and she just says, "Just drop me. Like, honestly." And he drops her. Well, he doesn't drop her. She lets go. She lets go. She falls to her death. Black Widow dies. And that was... I saw it coming when they did it, I think. But it was quite touching, and it did hit me a little bit. Because I love it when they kill characters off in this MCU thing. Because it's ballsy. It really is ballsy to kill characters off and to keep them dead. We know there's loads of characters coming back, but killing characters off, especially in this way, with Hawkeye having to let go of someone he loved, like it's just it was really impressive scene. It was really well shot. The music was excellent. Hawkeye goes back to the present day Avengers HQ without Black Widow. Everyone looks. Hawkeye falls down to his knees. They say, "Where's Nat?" And he says, "A soul for a soul, pretty much. She'd do anything. She'd do anything for this. She'd do anything for this team, for the stones." And then he says, "Thanos went with his daughter, came back without her, came back with an Infinity Stone." Hulk punches the floor because everyone forgot that there was a Hulk Black Widow romance back in 2015 with Age of Ultron, which I'm not too bothered about, to be honest. But no, they have all 6 Infinity Stones though, and that's the important thing. And Tony Stark has made like an Infinity Gauntlet, like an Iron Man Infinity Gauntlet. And they're basically deciding who's going to do it. Hulk says, "I'll do it," because it basically emits a gamma radiation, and I'm literal gamma radiation. So they're all there. Hulk snaps his fingers. He does it. He snaps his fingers just about. He suffers some damage to his right arm though. But as he's doing all that, Nebula is opening a portal so Thanos' ships and all of his men can come through. And that is where we go into the final act. And the final act was just bombastic fun. Like, this was just epic proportions battle. You have Thanos and all his men come through, and we've got a couple of things going on. Hulk gets stuck underneath all the rubble with basically as Thanos' army comes through, they just start destroying shit. And Hulk and Rocket and I believe it was Rhodey gets stuck underneath loads of rubble, and then you've got everyone else on top, and Thanos sits down. Nebula's fighting Hawkeye, but at this time as well, you've got the Gamora from the alive Gamora and the captured Nebula, so the good Nebula, who basically Gamora's like, "What happens to us in the future?" And then Nebula's like, "I tried to kill you a couple of times, but then you turned good." And then Gamora's like, "No, we need to stop him then." And then they go and stop Bad Nebula from killing Hawkeye, which is cool. And then what we have is this amazing scene where we have the 3 main Avengers. We have Captain America, we have Iron Man, and we have Thor. And they all look at Thanos, and they look at him, and we go into the 3-on-1 massive battle, and it looks incredible. Shields are going everywhere, hammers are going everywhere. It is incredible. Oh, also, before Thor left Asgard, he made sure that he pulled Mjolnir, so he had Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, so he goes in with both of them. That part is crazy, but Thanos destroys the 3 of them. Thor's taken out, Iron Man's taken out, Cap's shield is getting destroyed by Thanos' massive lance, and Cap's shield has had like a quarter of it cut out, and Cap is destroyed. And what happens is Cap gets up, all of Thanos' forces are coming through all these force fields. But then, and I actually remembered this, it was like a second before it happened. I was like, they'll be fine because everyone's now alive. So what happens is all these portals open from all the sorcerer portals open, and you've got all the sorcerers and Doctor Strange, and then you've got all of the Wakandans with Black Panther and Okoye and Shuri and M'Baku, and you've got Tom Holland, Spider-Man comes through. You've got the Guardians of the Galaxy, Quill, Groot, Mantis, Drax, and that is all the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Gamora, but she's already there. You've got, who else is there? Falcon comes through. You've got all the women. Pepper Potts turns up. You've got Captain Marvel who turns up. You've got Valkyrie, Wasp. Everyone just turns up for this massive conclusion battle. And this felt to me like the biggest conclusion of any battle in cinema because of the scope, because of the quantity of people, because of the scope and the stakes are really what make this so important and so special to me. And the fact that I've lived through all these films, that's important too. And this was just epic. There was just fights going on everywhere, and it looked absolutely beautiful. And it was all about everyone keeping the Infinity Gauntlet away from Thanos. So Thanos' men would go and fight, and there's Ebony Maw and Corvus Glaive and the big heavy guy that I can't remember his name. But they all fight each other. Doctor Strange is there. Tony Stark talks to Doctor Strange and is like, is this the one where we win? And we'll get to that in a little bit. Spider-Man Tony Stark hugs Spider-Man. He's like, it's good to see you, Pete. And it's great. Pepper Potts turns up, as I said, in Rescue, which is really cool. You get all the women, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's just such an amazing collaboration of people in one scene. Quill gets punched by Gamora, which is really cool. Quill's there, Drax is there, like everyone's just there, and it's beautiful and amazing cinema. Like, it's a cinema moment, I'd say, is what I'd say. As I said earlier on, it's a cinema moment to have all these people in this one place at this one time for this massive battle, and that's why I think this felt so much like a massive conclusion. And they keep the Infinity Gauntlet away, and then they say like they want, and then Captain Marvel comes and just is overpowered. One of my favourite moments was Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, turns up and she looks at Thanos and says, "You took everything from me." And Paul Bettany is actually seen as Jarvis Human in 1970 with Ted Stark, but no, you see Wanda Maximoff, and she goes up to Thanos and says, "You stole everything from me," and she like is literally destroying him because she's overpowered as well. Like, she's amazing. And then all the women fight because they give the Infinity Gauntlet to Captain Marvel, and she's like, "I don't know if I can." She didn't say, "I don't know if I can do it." She's like, "Piece of cake." And then I think everyone else is like, "We'll watch your back." And it's all the women. And I thought this was a little bit preachy, but it was still a cool moment to have all these powerful, heroic female women. You've got Captain Marvel, you've got Scarlet Witch, Okoye, you've got Pepper Potts as Rescue, you've got I think you had Valkyrie and Wasp, and obviously not Black Widow, but you had all these women, powerful female heroes that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has made, and obviously none of them are as powerful as Captain Marvel, but it was a cool moment. It just felt a little bit preachy. And Captain Marvel is there, and she's fighting Thanos, and Thanos goes to headbutt her, and she no-sells it completely. But then Thanos gets the Infinity Gauntlet, and he puts it on, and he keeps trying to put it on, and everyone's trying to get in. Spider-Man's trying to get in there, Cap's trying to get in there, Thor's trying to get in there. They're all trying to stop him from putting the Infinity Gauntlet on. But he finally gets it on, and he's like, "Finally, I can do it." He clicks, but he does nothing. He turns the gauntlet round, he sees that there's no gems in it. They're all in Iron Man's gauntlet. He clicks his fingers, and all of Thanos' forces turn to dust. Thanos sits down like a beaten villain, and he turns to dust too. Tony Stark sits down. The gauntlet is essentially, it's gamma radiation and stuff. It destroyed Tony Stark. He sat down. Rhodey came up to him and was like, Tony, Tony, Tony. Peter Parker comes up to him and he says his goodbyes. Pepper Potts comes up to him, finally says her goodbyes, and Tony Stark dies. And that nearly got me. I was very watery-eyed for that. But it nearly got me. It was very close to getting me. Tony Stark is the maestro of the MCU. Like, there wouldn't be an MCU without the Iron Man and the success of that first film. And a lot of it goes to Downey Jr., and I think that he's had a fantastic career as the MCU and as Iron Man. There will never be another Iron Man that will do as well as Downey did. Amazing. And that is it. That is the end of the battle, the end of the war with Thanos. And the rest of the film, which is probably another 20 minutes, or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, is just wrap up. And it's just, they miss Natasha Romanoff. They do a really nice scene with Hawkeye and Scarlet Witch, where Hawkeye's like, I hope they know we won. Wanda's like, they do know we won. Korg is in the battle as well, which is really cool. And then you've got Tony Stark's funeral, which it shows you everyone. It shows you all the Avengers. It shows you all the Wakandan people. It shows you all the Guardians of the Galaxy. It shows you Captain Marvel. It shows you everyone that has contributed to making this film feel as big as it is. This film's going to break records on the box office. It will probably crack 2 billion. I'd be shocked if it didn't crack 2 billion. It was a great moment to see. I loved the pan shot that they did. It's a really long, sustained pan shot of movement that captures all the different characters, as I said. Really cool moment. And then at the end, it's what do we do with the Infinity Stones? Basically, we've got to put them back where they belong. And they decide to make it Cap who does it, because he's the most trustworthy, I suppose. And obviously Bucky was in the fight as well. I forgot to mention Bucky, Winter Soldier. But no, they say Cap can do it. They send him through. Hulk counts down 5 seconds because that's when he's supposed to return, and he doesn't return. And Bucky and Sam Wilson Falcon get worried. But in the distance, Hulk sees an old man sitting on a bench. They immediately know it's Cap, and they walk up to him. They decide that it should be Sam who walks up to him, and I really appreciate it that his two best friends, his old best friend Bucky and his new best friend Sam, they decided that his new best friend Sam Wilson should go and talk to Captain America. He goes up to Captain America and he says, "How you doing, Cap? Like, what happened? Is this an accident or is it something you wanted?" And Cap says, "You know what? I wanted to live that life that Tony talked about." So he lives the life when he goes back in time. He lives the life that he wanted with Peggy. He lives the life with the girl he loved that he never got a chance to because he became a super soldier and got frozen. He is like a 70-year-old man, but before he says that he brought something for Sam. He gives him his Captain America shield. He says, Sam goes, "This isn't mine, it doesn't feel like mine." And Sam goes, "Well, it is yours now." Cap goes, "Well, it is yours now." And that was chills. It was awesome. Sam, of all the people he could give the shield to, is interesting. I would have given it to someone else, but I get why, because he's his best friend. So that is basically the end of Captain America in these films as well, which did make me cry. I'm not going to lie, that actually did make me cry. He's my favourite superhero. And yeah, that really got me. He's my favourite superhero. As I said, I've got pictures all around this house. I've got pop vinyl. Like, he's my favourite superhero. And to see it, the final act of Captain America in the MCU felt really cool. Almost a privilege to watch it. And that was pretty much the end of the film. Like, I can't think if there was anything after that. I don't think there really was. There was just kind of saying Avengers, and the Avengers team going over all the people charging into battle as well was just amazing. And also, just before Thanos clicks his fingers, Tony Stark looks at Doctor Strange, and what may be the coolest moment in the film outside of Korg was Strange is looking at him and he goes, and I literally, it was like chills. It was like hair standing up on my arm. Like it was that cool. But no, the film ends with Tony Stark dead, Black Widow dead, and it seems like Captain America's done. And what a way to conclude your 4-act Avengers films, but not just your 4-act Avengers films, but your 23, is it, I think, film series that is the MCU. And I know it's not the end of the MCU, I guess it's the end of the Avengers, though, so it is the conclusion of the Avengers. What a way to end it. Like, it just felt like they did everything they needed to, outside of a couple of storylines that I felt were a little bit lackadaisical and weren't touched upon enough in other films. The Hulk, Black Widow romance, which I'd never really cared about anyway. And there is one thing I do need to touch upon that I don't think a lot of people will. The time paradox stuff. And the time travel stuff I don't want to get into too much because it's a little bit too complicated for even me. But the fact that Thanos goes forward in time to get the Infinity Gauntlet to stop would not happen because he would not. It's so hard to explain. Basically, the film's time traveling is basically a paradox. Thanos, it's like it's basically Thanos wouldn't go in, if Thanos went in time and got the Infinity Gauntlet and snapped his fingers, then he would never have been able to go in time and snap his fingers with the Infinity Gauntlet, so it never works, so it'd be a continuous loop of time paradoxes. But no, like, outside of nitpicks with the film, in all honesty, it didn't feel bloated. Like, I never checked my watch, so I'm not going to say time. I'm going to say that it wasn't marketed to me as slow as it was in the beginning, which was fine, because I actually really appreciate the deeper character moments and conversations between characters. Infinity War was very good with its conversations too. It had a little bit more action than this one, which is why I am going to be one of those people that do actually prefer Infinity War. I gave that film a 10, I believe. Definitely, I should have really watched my Infinity War reviews before I watched this, or recorded this, but I just started recording it immediately. But no, like, Infinity War is a fantastic film, probably one of the best superhero film of all time. And this one is, it's probably number 2. Like, Endgame, to me, as a conclusion, was everything I wanted it to be. It was fantastic from start to finish. It subverted my expectations. It tugged at my heartstrings. More than most films, with Cap, like, that was the one thing that just got me. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do not seeing Cap anymore. It's like, when I watched Infinity War, the one thing I was excited for was, like, I want to see Cap. like, I want to really see Cap. And now I'm going to have to go into these films and not want to see Cap. The Guardians films are excellent. They're really funny. Like, they're great. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we go from here, because there is pretty much a blank canvas. You've basically started again. You can do another Black Panther, another Spider-Man, another Captain Marvel, a new Guardians, a Hawkeye film. I would really appreciate, because Jeremy Renner was fantastic in this film. But no, the MCU at the minute is flourishing, and as much as I criticise it when I'm not reviewing it like this and when I'm not watching it, and I think that sometimes some of these standalone films or the origin stories of characters are very one note and kind of not boring, but samey and cliched, and they are. Captain Marvel and Black Panther are good examples of really cliched films that are still good films, but they're really cliched. This film here stands tall, and the MCU stands tall as one of the great kind of things that cinema has produced, especially in the last 25 years. I think the MCU will be talked about for a long time. And it's not finished, so I don't even know why I'm saying it as a conclusion, but the Avengers, I suppose, is a quadrilogy, or a tetralogy, I believe it's called, maybe. Or is that 5? I have no idea. I think it's just a quadrilogy. It's an achievement that this series has gotten as impressive as it has. Because remember, superheroes are nerdy. Like, superheroes are nerdy. They're for nerds. They're for the people who just read comic books and stuff. And as like someone who does all that, watching these films doesn't bother me. But the fact that these films have so much mass market appeal, kids love them, adults love them. I have friends who you would never see read a comic book that love these films because of the scope, the magnitude, the quality, the acting, the actual performances. The characters are so compelling on the big screen. And I think that's probably what the MCU will be remembered for the most. And I think out of all the films, this is probably the one that deserves the most credit for just throwing fucking every character at the wall possible and just running with what they had. And I think that in terms of a rating for it, I'm going to give it, and this is really cheeky, but a 9.5 out of 10. If anyone was a 10, I think that was like the perfect superhero movie. This film was very close. Just a couple of little things I just wish they'd tweaked, or, you know, I knew they were going to do the quantum realm. It was just how would they explain it? They didn't really explain it. But yeah, that's it. 9.5 out of 10. Endgame's great. Go and watch it if you haven't. I'll probably go watch it again by the end of the month. So I guess that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. This has been Raw Russell. Like, comment, subscribe, more. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think of my game room? What do you think to my Bulbasaur? What do you think to my Pikachu? What do you think to my drawing of Captain America that my partner Sherelle got me for Christmas, and my beautiful little Iron Man teddy bear? What did you think to Endgame? What did you think to the death of Black Widow and Iron Man? What did you think to Captain America being gone as well? What did you think to the final confrontation battle? Do you think I've been too harsh giving it a 9.5? Do you think it's better than Infinity War? And do you think it's the best MCU movie? Thank you for watching, guys, very much. This has been a long video, but I've really enjoyed doing it, and I hope you check out my upcoming videos, my room tour, whatever. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Revolver Rosala.